Before you go to sleep tonight, society will have already decided who you can be tomorrow. That's not an exaggeration, it's a cold diagnosis. You clicked on this video because you sense that something is very, very wrong. You feel these invisible chains taming you. What really happens when you leave the herd? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, left us a map not only for the breakout, but also for what comes afterwards. It's a journey where the mass of society will try to eat your soul. Stay tuned, because I will reveal to you the secret code Jung gave us to not only survive this fight, but to become true to who we are. We will break these chains together. Forget everything you've heard about cheap motivational sayings. Carl Jung was not a motivational speaker. He was a soul doctor, and his diagnosis for our modern world was brutally honest, a collective unconsciousness. He saw how most people spend their lives in a kind of half-sleep, controlled by invisible forces they don't understand. They believe they are free in their decisions, in their opinions, in their tastes. But in truth, according to Jung, they are merely the puppets of a larger, unconscious script. They follow the paths that others have trodden before them, without ever asking where this path actually leads or whether it is their own. It is a state of permanent conformity, a quiet, constant sacrifice of one's soul on the altar of belonging. The peer pressure we are all familiar with is far more than just a psychological phenomenon. It acts like a sedative, a drug that calms us down. Scientists have discovered that social approval and affiliation stimulate the release of oxytocin in our brain. This hormone is also known as the cuddle hormone and creates strong bonds. It feels good to belong. It feels safe. It is a chemical tether that binds us to the group and makes us believe that this warmth of the herd is true peace. But this warmth comes at a price. Jung described it with the metaphor of the flock of sheep. The flock offers protection from the wolf. It offers warmth on cold nights. It offers simple orientation. Just follow the sheep in front of you. But we pay a high rent for this deceptive security, a soul rent. We give up our uniqueness, our edges, our contradictions, our potential. We allow ourselves to be sheared, marked, and herded into the pasture that is intended for us. And the worst thing about it, most of us don't even realize it. They think the gate is the horizon, but you feel it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. This journey, this escape from the herd, is no Sunday stroll. It is a test. To be more precise, 3 tests await you, and each one is more challenging and dangerous than the last. They are the guardians at the gates to true freedom, and we will now confront them together. The first big test on the way out of the herd is subtle and at the same time omnipresent. It is the power of projection. Have you ever wondered why certain qualities in other people upset you so incredibly? The loud neighbor, the seemingly arrogant colleague, the boastful acquaintance. Carl Jung had an impressively simple yet profound explanation for this. He said, "The thing that annoys you about your neighbor is often your own poorly trimmed shadow." What he meant by this is the concept of projection. We all have a side of ourselves that we don't like, a collection of traits, desires, and impulses that don't fit into the image we have of ourselves or that society expects of us. Jung called this part the shadow. Because we don't want to see this shadow in ourselves, because confronting it would be painful, we do something ingenious and at the same time fatal. We outsource it. We project these unloved parts of ourselves onto other people. The herd, society, is a master at this. It constantly organizes collective shadow parties. Just think of the waves of outrage on social media. One person makes a mistake, says something wrong, and immediately the mob pounces on them. Thousands of comments, full of hate, full of contempt. What happens here is a mass dumping of one's own shadow. The people who shout the loudest are often those who unconsciously carry a similar weakness or a similar repressed desire within them. By fighting it on the outside, they don't have to feel it on the inside. It is a cheap form of self-purification that does not cleanse anything, but only throws the dirt on others. So, what happens if you decide to stop taking part in this circus? When you start to disconnect and go your own way? Right at that moment, something dangerous happens. You stop being part of the projecting crowd and become a projection screen yourself. The herd can't stand it when someone else is. Your decision to stop running with them is perceived as an attack on their way of life. Your freedom is a reflection of their own lack of freedom. And to avoid having to look at this painful mirror, they will cast their shadow over you. Suddenly, you are the arrogant eccentric, the selfish rebel, the dreamer who is out of touch with reality. They will accuse you of everything they can't stand in themselves. You get the full load of their inner conflict as a free delivery of hate. This is the first big test. Withstanding the onslaught of projections without joining in the hatred yourself or collapsing under the weight of false accusations. It is the herd's attempt to catch you again by throwing the dirt at you that it doesn't want to see. And this is where your real work begins. Before we go any further, I invite you to take a small but powerful first step. Take a moment, maybe pause the video for a moment, and make a note of one quality that regularly drives you up the wall with other people. Just one. Be honest with yourself. This little note, this one note, could be the first crack in the fence that keeps you trapped. It's the first step in taking back your own shadow. If projection is the first rampart of the herd, then conformity is the sweet drug that keeps everyone inside the gate. Conformity tastes like industrially manufactured food. It promises quick satiety, it's cheap to have, but the true price only reveals itself later, in a deep, gnawing stomachache of the soul. We humans are social beings, and the desire to please and be accepted is deeply rooted in us. Neuroscience shows us this very clearly today. When we experience affirmation from the group, when our opinions and behaviors match those of the majority, our reward center in the brain fires. It releases dopamine, the happiness hormone that gives us a feeling of satisfaction and well-being. In other words, our brain chemically rewards us for conforming. Society has perfected this neurological program. From school to the workplace to the media, we are constantly encouraged to fit in. Those who step out of line are at best ridiculed, at worst punished. The famous Asch experiment from the 1950s impressively demonstrated this uncanny power of the group. Test subjects were asked to compare the length of lines, a very simple task. But there was a catch. Everyone else in the room, apart from the actual test subject, were actors who deliberately gave the wrong answer. What happened? A shockingly high proportion of the real test subjects agreed with the group's obviously wrong opinion. They no longer trusted their own judgment and betrayed their own perceptions just to avoid looking like outsiders. Today, in the age of social media, this embarrassment from the 50s has become part of our everyday lives in high definition. The pressure to have the right opinion, to live the right lifestyle, to buy the right products is omnipresent. The masses set the pace, and the brain rewards us for marching along. However, this is the great paradox that Carl Jung saw as the core of the problem. The process of individuation, i.e. the path to becoming whole and developing the true self requires the exact opposite. It requires the courage to trust one's own inner voice more than the loud clamor of the crowd. It requires a willingness to forgo the cheap dopamine rushes of group affirmation. Paradoxically, trying to please everyone ends up erasing the very thing that makes us unique and lovable, our individuality. We become a copy of a copy, an echo in the great echo chamber of society. We lose touch with our inner compass, with what is really important to us, what really defines us. The price of constant conformity is the loss of our own soul. And when you start to resist this mechanism, when you start to say no to conformity, that's when the painful part begins. It's like withdrawing from a drug. Your brain will rebel. It will scream for its usual dose of validation. Society will increase the pressure. And that's the second big test on your journey. Now comes the withdrawal. And it hurts. This is where most people fail. This is where 80% of would-be rebels jump ship and flee back into the deceptive warmth of the herd. Are you one of them? Or are you ready to go through the deepest and darkest valley of your journey? Welcome to the Valley of Loneliness. When you put down the drug of conformity and withstand the projections of the masses, the inevitable consequence is isolation. It is not a punishing isolation, but a necessary pool of maturity. Carl Jung knew this. He repeatedly retreated to his tower in Bollingen, a house he had built with his own hands, without electricity or running water. He called it his place of maturation. Here, in the silence and seclusion, he was able to block out the voices of society and listen to the voice of his own soul. However, this phase of solitude is anything but romantic. It is brutal. The withdrawal symptoms set in with full force. It is a kind of social hangover, a feeling of being naked and unprotected. Doubts gnaw at you. Was this the right decision? Maybe the others are right after all. Added to this is an agonizing identity vertigo. If you no longer derive your identity from belonging to a group, be it your profession, your social class, your circle of friends, then who are you? The silence that surrounds you becomes a deafening noise of your own fears and insecurities. You feel a phantom sense of belonging, much like an amputee still feels their lost limb. You see people laughing in groups and feel a stab in your heart. You scroll through social media and see the staged community of others, and the loneliness feels like a physical pain. In this state of supreme vulnerability lurks the biggest trap, the search for a quick fix. The pain of loneliness is so great that many try to numb it by rushing headlong into the next best community. This could be a political splinter group, an esoteric sect, or simply an echo chamber on the internet, a forum where everyone shares the same extreme opinion. They simply exchange one herd for another. But that's not progress. It's restarting the game at the same level. You immediately give up your newfound painful freedom in order to feel the old comforting warmth of belonging. It takes immense strength to resist this urge. It takes courage to persevere in the valley of loneliness, to feel the pain and not to numb it. Because only those who walk through this valley without looking for a shortcut will find something in the end, or rather, someone. After the bottom of the valley, when the pain is at its greatest, a bouncer is waiting. He guards the entrance to your innermost core. It is the inner guardian. You have crossed the valley of loneliness. The voices of the herd have become quieter. But just when you think you have survived the worst, the most powerful opponent appears on the scene, the inner guardian. This guardian is not an external enemy. It is a part of you. It is the internalized voice of the herd that you have absorbed over decades. And when you hear it, its voice sounds suspiciously like your mother, your father, your strictest teacher, or the boss you were always afraid of. It is the voice of convention, of reason, of fear, which now speaks to you from within yourself. This inner guardian launches 3 targeted psychological attacks to force you to turn back. These are the last desperate attempts of the old system to regain control over you. The first attack is guilt. The voice in your head will whisper to you, "You are disappointing everyone who loves you. Look at what you're doing to your family. They are worried. You are selfish. You're tearing down everything others have built for you." Because a creative act takes you out of the passive victim role. While the inner guardian whispers that you are worthless and will fail, you create something visible, something tangible. You prove to yourself through your actions that you are a creator, not a victim. A small, self-determined project that you put your heart and soul into is psychologically more effective than 10 self-help books because it gives you a sense of self-efficacy and pride. It is your proof to yourself that you are capable of creating your own path. The third antidote is what I call the conscious encounter. It is the cure for paralyzing loneliness without falling into the trap of a new herd. Jung spoke of the importance of genuine, deep relationships. It's not about finding a new, large circle of friends to pat you on the back. It's about finding a few people with whom a conscious, authentic encounter is possible. People who are also on your path, who understand your struggles, who don't judge you for your path, but who see and appreciate you in your uniqueness. Form a mini tribe of like-minded people instead of looking for a new herd. The difference? A herd demands conformity and conformity. A tribe of individuals celebrates difference and supports each other in the process of individuation. A single such relationship can outweigh the loneliness of 1,000 superficial contacts. And this is where something magical happens. Once you start practicing these 3 antidotes, shadow work, creative act, and conscious encounter, in your life, once you stay the course, the universe sends you little confirmations, little coincidences that feel like a wink. Jung had a very special word for this: synchronicity. Suddenly, strange things happen. You think of an old friend, and the next moment, he calls. You are struggling with a certain question, and the answer jumps out at you from a randomly opened book. Signals and events seem to coincide in a way that can't possibly be coincidental. And you ask yourself, am I going crazy now, or am I on the path to enlightenment? Welcome to the world of synchronicity. Carl Jung defined this phenomenon as an acausal parallelism. It sounds complicated, but it means something very simple. 2 or more events seem to happen at the same time, where one is not the cause of the other. That would be causality, but they are connected in a profound way by their meaning for the observer. It is not that your thought of the friend caused the phone call. It is rather that your inner state and the outer event coincide in a meaningful pattern. Jung himself experienced a famous synchronicity that reinforced his theory. He was treating a patient who was very rational and cerebral and had blocked all access to her feelings. One night, she had a dream about a golden scarab, a sacred beetle in ancient Egypt. While she was telling Jung about this dream the next day, he heard a knock on the window. He opened it and caught an insect flying in, a golden-green, shimmering rose beetle, the European analogy to the scarab. At that moment, reality broke through the patient's rational fortress. The coincidence was so incredible that it triggered a deep emotional response and paved the way for her healing. Such events also happen in our everyday lives when we begin to pay attention to our true path. But caution is advised. Not every chance meeting is a meaningful synchronicity. Our minds tend to see patterns where there are none, especially when we desire something strongly. That's why it's important to have a filter. I'll give you 3 criteria to distinguish true synchronicity from mere wishful thinking. First, the improbability. The event must be so improbable that it can hardly be explained by pure coincidence. Secondly, the personal significance. The event must have a deep, immediate, and often emotional significance for your current life issue or inner state. It feels like a direct answer. Third, the transformative power. True synchronicity leaves a lasting impression. It changes your perspective, encourages you on your path, or gives you a decisive impulse for the next step. If these 3 criteria are met, you can assume that you have experienced a genuine synchronistic event. And what is the final benefit claim? The message behind these strange coincidences? Synchronicity is the live feedback loop of life. It's the universe's way of winking at you and saying, "You're on the right track. Keep going. Don't turn back to the herd." It's the subtle but powerful affirmation that you are not alone, even if you sometimes feel that way. We have reached the end of this journey, but not the end of your path. Because the herd is still waiting. It waits with open arms that can quickly close around you like fangs. It will lure you again and again with the warmth of community, the comfort of conformity, and the promise of lifting the heavy burden of personal responsibility from your shoulders. The decision is yours to make every day. Let us briefly recall the weapons with which it will attack you and your inner system. The attack of guilt that wants to label you a traitor. The attack of fear that wants to paralyze you with horror scenarios. And the attack of ridicule that wants to destroy your self-worth. But you are no longer defenseless. You now know the 3 powerful antidotes that Carl Jung left us. The fearless shadow work that makes you unassailable to projections. The powerful creative act that gives you self-efficacy and meaning. And the conscious encounter with like-minded people that heals the deepest loneliness. It is your choice. The warm blanket of conformity that slowly suffocates you, or the cold but infinitely fresh air of personal responsibility. The noise of the many that numbs you, or the silence in which you can hear your own soul. The question is not whether you have to fight. The question is how you fight. I would like to invite you to take a first conscious step. Write in the comments now. Which chain will you break first? Is it the chain of guilt, fear, ridicule, or something else entirely? This act of publicly acknowledging your decision can have tremendous power. And if you have a friend who you know desperately needs this message right now, share this video. Sometimes a little nudge from the outside is all it takes to find the courage to take the first step. I hope you've learned something that you'll carry with you for a long time to come. I know it can all be a bit overwhelming. That's how I felt at the beginning, and I had more questions than answers in my head. Nevertheless, I think this video, which you can see here, could be particularly helpful in your current situation. It deals with the topic, why adaptation makes you sick, and closes the circle to what we discussed today. I know you're looking for more answers. You'll find them in this video, so click on it now and watch it.